Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the University of Adelaide's 3-minute final. I'm Professor Carolyn Pleaver. I'm the Provost Chancellor of Research, Education Development and Dean of Graduate Studies here at the University of Adelaide. I'm also super excited today to be the host of the evening, but also one of the judges on the judging panel as well. To everyone online, but also, of course, to everyone here in the theatre, welcome and thank you so much for coming. It really is going to be a very exciting event that we've been looking forward to for a very long time. I would like to first acknowledge the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians of the Adelaide Plains on which we meet today, and the lands on which the University of Adelaide's campuses are built. 3-minute Thesis, or 3MT, is a competition for high degree research students, and one that requires them to compress years of research into just 3 minutes. It initially was instigated and dreamed up by the University of Queensland in 2008 and is now delivered by over 900 universities in over 85 countries. So it is certainly a fabulous event to be a part of. The 3MT has become an important element of the university's monthly Research Tuesdays series, where our researchers share their latest breakthroughs and discuss cutting-edge discoveries in their field. And this is one where we really love to showcase to you the fabulous research that our PhD students and early career researchers undertake. It also provides a great opportunity for our PhD candidates to hone their communication skills, but also showcase and practice in communicating and sharing their research to a general audience, rather than the peers within their specialised fields that they might more commonly present to. Now, dozens of research students were actually part of the heats within the various different faculties. So we're very privileged today to see the 10 of the best of what we've been able to witness as part of already wonderful heats in each of the faculties. Now, tonight's winner will represent the University of Adelaide at the Asia Pacific Finals, so definitely keep a watch out for that later on in the year. But for now, to explain more about the event and to walk us through housekeeping, please welcome last year's 3MT runner-up and this year's MC, Ashleigh Lake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello everybody. As Carolyn mentioned, my name is Ashleigh. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the South Australian Immunogenomics in Cancer Institute and the Adelaide Centre for Epigenetics here at the University of Adelaide. But 12 months ago, I was a final year PhD student, and as Carolyn mentioned, I know exactly how these 10 in front of me are feeling right now as I competed in the 3-minute thesis competition. We're all really excited to hear about your research tonight, and I wish you all the very best of luck this evening. Now, before we begin, I will talk through the competition rules and the judging criteria, and I will introduce our judging panel. There are some straightforward but challenging rules that our students must adhere to in the 3-minute thesis competition, which are now shown on the slide behind me. To summarise, our presenters are allowed one static PowerPoint slide, 3 minutes and 3 minutes only of spoken word and just themselves. No props, no costumes, no extra seconds, no songs, no breakdancing allowed. And now for the judging criteria, which includes both the comprehension and content and engagement and communication sections. For comprehension and content, our finalists will be selected based on who best explains their research background and importance, who best describes their key results, and who creates the clearest presentation for an audience. For engagement and communication, which are also very important, tonight's winner will be informative, but not so informative that they don't leave you wanting to learn a little bit more. They will speak to us colloquially, but not so much so that it trivialises their research. And they will engage us consistently throughout their 3-minute presentation. The usefulness of their presentation slide will also be considered. At face value, this set of rules may sound easy, but I can tell you from experience that this simple list provides a great challenge to our competitors. And to assess how they meet these challenges, we have a wonderful panel of judges who I am now very pleased to introduce. And judges, I will ask you to please stand as I call your names. Dr. Tatiana Suarez da Costa is an Australian Research Council Future Fellow and the head of the Herbicide Antimicrobial Innovation Laboratory at the university's Waite campus. Welcome, Tatiana. Associate Professor Scott Clark is Discipline Head at the University of Adelaide School of Psychiatry as part of our medical school. Welcome, Scott. Associate Professor Russell Brewer leads the Adelaide Cybercrime Laboratory and teaches criminology at the university's School of Social Sciences. Welcome to Russell. Dr. Doreen Krumbiegel is Director of the Adelaide Graduate Research School, and she is a recognised expert in operations and people and project management with experience working in academia. And welcome to Doreen. And Carolyn, who you've already met this evening as our host, is also our Pro Vice-Chancellor of Researcher Education and Development and the Dean of Graduate Studies at the University of Adelaide. What you haven't heard already is that she's also a Professor of Marketing and Stakeholder Engagement, specialising in university business engagement. Welcome once again, Carolyn. So this very experienced, well-rounded and esteemed panel will be responsible for choosing one of these fantastic students to be our winner and to attend the 2024 Asia Pacific 3 Minute Thesis final. The judges' winner will receive a wonderful $3,000 prize. Our runner-up will receive $1,500. And there will also be a People's Choice Award winner, chosen by you, our audience. So after our 10 finalists have finished their presentations, we'll put up a QR code on the screen and you'll be asked to cast your vote for your favourite presenter. And this is an important vote because the People's Choice Award winner will win $1,250 prize. So lastly, before we get going, just a little bit of housekeeping. Please do ensure that your phones are on silent and away until the voting for People's Choice begins. And please do stay seated while finalists are presenting and don't take any flash photography. Thank you. Toilets, if you require them, are in the building just behind me, but the best way to access them is actually to go through the doors you entered in and follow the signs. But please speak to one of our friendly team if you would like some help with directions. All right, I think we should now get started. The way this will proceed is that I will introduce a finalist and they will give their 3-minute presentation. After each presentation, we will invite members of the audience or our judges to ask the presenter a question, and they will have the opportunity to respond. We ask that you please save your applause until after the finalist responds to the question asked of them. And then after the final presentation, judges will step away to deliberate while the audience submits their votes for the People's Choice. And then finally, I'll get everybody up here and will join me for the announcement of the winners. All right, are we ready? Fantastic. Can I please invite Ashleigh Lake forward? Ashleigh is from the Faculty of Sciences, Engineering and Technology and will be presenting Chasing Cells Literally. Please join me on stage and welcome.
Did you ever play tag as a kid? Or maybe you called it chasey. Whatever you called it, the game was the same, right? Someone was it, and they ran around chasing people trying to tag them. Well, I'd like to explain how I'm using this simple childhood game to investigate a rare condition called Gaucher disease. People with Gaucher disease can't break down a particular fat molecule or lipid. This lipid builds up in the cell and leads to devastating symptoms like bone disease, enlarged organs, dementia, and ultimately, premature death. Because this lipid is a part of a much larger system, other lipids are also affected. Some are increased, others reduced, and even new lipids are created. And this is all really interesting because it tells us that the cell is trying to change its processes to compensate for this block in lipid breakdown. And this is really what my PhD work is all about, trying to understand what these changes are and the impact this might have on overall cell function. Now, I bet you're wondering where tag comes into play. So for this, I'll direct you to the screen. You notice how some lipids are bigger than others? This also means that some lipids are heavier than others. And I can tell the difference between green and blue and purple and orange simply by measuring how much they weigh. I can also change their weights and play tag with the cells by performing a technique called pulse chase labeling. Basically, I give the cells a label. In this case, a pink lipid carrying around a top hat. And I let the cells play tag, sharing around the hats as they go. When the game is over and it's time to measure the lipids, I know that anyone wearing a top hat is 16 units heavier than its usual weight. So I know this lipid has been tagged in the game. I can track who has a top hat, when they were tagged, and who they passed the hat off to, which allows me to see what healthy cells are doing and what Gaucher disease cells are doing to compare how they play the game differently. And so far, I've found that Gaucher disease cells like to target this blue guy, tagging as many lipids as possible as quickly as possible to make sure that he's the one wearing the top hat. Sorry. This targeting likely has consequences for how the cell functions overall, which means that even though it might be better for this top hat to be on the blue guy, it also might impact the rest of the cell's functions. By playing tag with the cells, we've come one step closer to understanding how Gaucher disease works, turning a simple childhood game into a complex technique to investigate disease. Thanks.
Wonderful work, Ashleigh. Thank you very much. We do have roaming microphones, so if you have a question for Ashleigh, please put your hand up and we will get a microphone to you so that you can ask that question. Audience, do we have any questions? Please put your hand up nice and big because I'm sort of a bit blind. How about from our judges? Do we have any questions from our judges?
Sorry, hello.
Beautiful.
I'm assuming it's not actually a top hat.
No. Well, it is the pink lipid, essentially. We just give them a lipid, but this lipid is isotopically labeled. So you might have heard of carbon-12, which is naturally abundant, but we use carbon-13s. So we're able to see the differences in the weights of the lipid. Cool, thanks.
Wonderful. Please join me in thanking Ashleigh for her presentation. Next up, we have Jyoti Kishore. Please join me on stage. Jyoti is from the Faculty of Arts, Business, Law and Economics and will be sharing research into the question, do entrepreneurs catch optimism within startup incubators? Take it away.
Everyone in this room has used the great innovations brought by the entrepreneurs. But did you know that despite having access to the same government policy, financial resources, or consumer market, 50% of them fail within just 5 years, and 90% of them eventually shut down, indicating there are other important factors beside these physical resources, and one of them is optimism. Optimism is just like hot air balloon. Entrepreneurs need that to take off their idea, but if they get too much of optimism, they become overconfident and that brings negative results. So, if optimism is good, but too much optimism is bad, where can we find the balance? Or understand how entrepreneurs catch this optimism? Well, often this balance is found in the startup incubators. Startup incubators boost up the success of the entrepreneurs by 87% by providing resources, a place to grow their ideas, grow their networks, and help each other to overcome the barrier. Somehow, optimism is spreading among the entrepreneurs. It is just like when I smile, you also smile. Or when I yawn, you feel yawning. Same thing is happening with optimism, but we don't know how. And my research will explore that. I am approaching this phenomena in 3 interesting ways. First, I am living with the entrepreneurs in a startup incubator and making observations. That means I am doing breakfast with them, doing networking, social events, and sometimes doing office with them. Besides, I am also analyzing their social media to understand their journey. And finally, I will do research interviews and surveys to understand and create a rich case study among startup community. So far, my research has found the community and the culture in the startup incubator plays a very important role to foster optimism. Besides, the celebration of the success, whether big or small, has a very big impact on the entrepreneurs. We spend a lot of money for entrepreneurship, but over time, we overlook the power of positivity. My research will explore how to balance this optimism, how startup incubator balance this optimism and apply that knowledge to reduce that failure rate I mentioned earlier and help the entrepreneurs to solve the problems in the real world. Thank you.
Wonderful. Do we have any questions from the audience? Fantastic. Yep. Just there? Lovely. I'll try and get a mic to you.
Thank you. I would imagine that optimism can often be a short-lived experience or emotion. So how are you measuring for the long-standing impact of optimism on a startup?
Thank you very much. Very wonderful question. So obviously, we have emotions like smile or fear that is kind of very short-lived. But with the optimism, I am doing my research for over long 1 year. I'm living with the entrepreneurs. So I can give an example. One of the entrepreneurs was just saying me, just by observing how people interact with each other, they could now know how to introduce themselves in front of the investors. That is something positive happened, and that happened just by observation of the other people. And that is something positive happening inside his mind. And he will apply that later on, but he already got that optimistic way. And with my research, beside this observation, when I'm living with the entrepreneurs, having these casual conversations, they're sharing these ideas with me, and that I'm counting, yes, this person got optimism in this form. I hope I could answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give Joki one last round of applause. Our next presenter is Isabella Burton. She's from the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences, and she's going to tell us how to kill a superbug. Welcome, Isabella.
What are you afraid of? Most of us have quite rational fears. Sharks, snakes, spiders, your in-laws, really any other life-threatening creature. In light of recent events, maybe you have a new fear, maybe a fear of losing the modern computing system. You probably remember where you were when a small bug caused a mass global computer outage. A mere 80 minutes of this so-called blue screen of death sent the world into chaos. People were stuck in grocers, unable to buy food. Flights grounded, leaving millions of people stranded. And our economy suffered $5 billion in damages. But if this is the impact of losing computers for 1 hour, what would happen if we lost something even more foundational? What chaos would we see if we lost the modern medical system? Unfortunately, this crisis may be closer than we'd hope. Antibiotics are the cornerstone of modern medicine. They give us the ability to cure deadly infections. But our antibiotics are failing. We are under attack by a growing army of superbugs, eager to infect your body system. These antibiotic-resistant bacteria cause 5 million deaths every year. Superbugs are clever. They've seen our antibiotics before, and they know how to escape them. But we have a surprising ally in this fight, and perhaps one you've never heard of, bacteriophage. Bacteriophages are tiny viruses that infect and kill bacteria and make our antibiotics more effective. Harnessing these natural allies could be the key to saving our medical system from total shutdown. But first, we need to test them, and that's where my research comes in. I'm running a groundbreaking clinical trial where we use bacteriophage to treat sinus infections. These infections cause my patients so much suffering, from constant headaches to repeated surgeries and symptoms that affect their every breath. We will treat 30 of these patients with bacteriophage and the other 30 patients with standard antibiotics. At the end, we'll compare to see which group does better. With this trial, we hope to be the first in the world to develop an entirely new antibacterial treatment, one that can cure my patients and kill superbugs. We don't know what the world will look like when antibiotics are no longer effective. This is what makes me truly afraid. A world where every surgical procedure, every lung infection or scrape could result in a deadly, untreatable infection. But I believe that with work like my research, developing a bacteriophage army against superbugs, that is a world we will never know. Thank you.
Great work, Isabella. Do we have any questions from our audience?
Yeah.
Just there. Thank you.
Is there a chance, like other superbugs, that resistance will grow to this over time?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yes, bacteria are always going to be evolving to try outwit whatever defenses we use against them. But what we actually find with development of with bacteriophage resistance, we call these bacteriophage insensitive mutants, or BIMs. And BIMs tend to actually increase their susceptibility to antibiotic treatment. So the defenses that bacteria are using to escape the bacteriophages, we can catch them with our other net of antibiotics, and it makes them easier to kill off with the antibiotics in most cases. But that's definitely something that in our trial we monitor for, and we, at every weekly time point when we see our patients, we isolate all the different staphylococcal bacteria that we grow from the sinus swabs, and we test them to see if they're still sensitive to our treatment. And we haven't had any resistance so far. Yeah.
Very important point to finish.
Yes.
Thanks very much, Isabella. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Now please make Zane Marks welcome. Zane is from the Faculty of Sciences, Engineering and Technology and will present Priming, Chemical X for Plants.
Plants can no longer keep up with human demands. Farming land is decreasing, nutrition is decreasing, world hunger is increasing, and us, the human population, well, we're ever increasing. In order to feed us and to help us fight malnutrition, we need a diverse range of crops to help. But new crops aren't adapted to the Australian landscape, and we don't have 1,000 years to breed the perfect plant. The situation is dire, and the only people we have to blame are ourselves. In times like these, I turn to heroes. And I've turned to the source of heroes I know best, cartoons, and more specifically, the Powerpuff Girls. So, for those of you who don't know the story, it goes a little bit like sugar, spice, and everything nice. These were the ingredients to make the perfect little girls. But Professor Utonium added an extra ingredient into the concoction, Chemical X. My PhD is all about creating my very own Chemical X for plants to help pave the way for a superpowered future. This works using a method called seed priming, which is as simple as soaking seeds in solutions to improve plant development. These solutions contain an abundant supply of nutrients that the plant needs not only to grow, but to survive in the harsh, hot Australian landscape. For example, let's take some magnesium for food production, a little bit of zinc for maybe plant growth, and sprinkle in some iron for nutrition, and there we have our very own sugar, spice, and everything nice. Now, these nutrients help to superpower the plant, which, much like the Powerpuff Girls and the city they protect the plant from dangerous conditions, which can hinder growth or even outright kill the plant. But that's not all. These same plants can pass on those nutrients onto us through the food they produce, in addition to producing more food in general from a happier, healthier plant. But no two plants are the same, and each one has a unique set of needs that we have to cater for. So my work lies in finding the perfect combination and concentration of these nutrients to help, or finding the chemical X. But the best part, once a plant's chemical X is found, anybody can use it, whether you're growing it for fun at home or you depend on it for your livelihood out in the field, truly making it everybody's hero. So, who's ready to save the day?
Thank you very much, Zane. Do we have an audience question? Or a question from our judges? Fantastic question from the judge. Thank you.
How do you choose which chemicals you look at?
That's a great question. It is a very trial and error sort of method. You go a bit too much on one, or you go a bit too little on the other, and you see it doesn't improve in comparison to base plants. So it's all about comparison to what we're usually receiving and how we can improve from there.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Zane. Next up, from the Faculty of Arts, Business Law and Economics is Megan Moon. And Megan will present Lighting the Fuse, BTS's Dynamite and K-pop's English Explosion. Welcome.
What do the Beatles and BTS have in common? Well, they're both boy bands, they're both global sensations, and all their biggest hits are in English. Except BTS are a Korean pop group, and in 2019, the group's leader said that if they ever sang in full English, then that's not BTS. So what happened? Well, in 2020, they released Dynamite, their first song with entirely English lyrics. Dynamite was a huge hit, topping the Billboard Hot 100 chart and becoming the first song by an Asian act to do so since the 60s. By using English, BTS broke down language barriers and made K-pop accessible to fans both new and old across the globe. Since then, K-pop's global popularity has continued to grow, and the use of English in K-pop has skyrocketed. However, this ongoing shift to English is troubling. Why should groups like BTS have to ditch their native Korean and switch to English in order to be globally successful? Well, it's because of problematic patterns in global media and pop culture. And that's what my research is addressing. I'm exploring the growing use of English in K-pop through the lens of cultural and linguistic hegemony. This refers to the domination of one language and culture over others, making it seem normal or superior. The best example of this is Western media and pop culture. Just think Disney, McDonald's, and Taylor Swift. And it's why the growing use of English in K-pop is so significant. With English as the default language of cool and successful global pop culture, artists from non-English speaking countries, like South Korea, might feel pressured to conform to Western standards for a shot at making it on the world stage. So, I'm looking at how English is impacting and reshaping K-pop. To do so, I've gathered heaps of data by analysing music charts and talking to local fans. My findings show that while English is mostly well received by fans, some worry that by using English, K-pop is losing the uniqueness that set it apart from Western pop music to begin with. English also helps K-pop reach broader audiences, although songs that use more English don't necessarily perform better on Western music charts. Ultimately, English appears to be a double-edged sword, one that enables K-pop to reach new heights while also reinforcing that artists must sing in English to be successful. This risks creating a world where everything sounds the same, and means that instead of sharing and celebrating our differences, we're losing the rich diversity that makes global pop culture so vibrant and diverse. And in the end, is it even K-pop without the K?
Oh. Please stay up here.
Sorry.
Thank you very much, Megan. Do we have a question from the audience, Megan? Down here near the front, if we get a mic to you just so everybody online can hear you as well.
I was just wondering, I think Psy is probably, with Gangnam Style, is probably one of the most famous K-pop songs.
Absolutely.
Korean and English. So would that therefore create an argument that mixing the two would be the best way to go?
I think Psy is a really kind of outstanding case because he didn't expect to go virally popular. No one expected him to go virally popular. And the irony is, what's the one lyric you remember from Gangnam Style? Hey, hey, sexy lady. Like, you know, those are the ones that really stick out, and I would argue that that's also, you know, English. So, I mean, I'm a purist. I want there to be Korean in K-pop music, but they're finding that English is the thing that's getting them out there. So it's about striking a balance, but who knows where we'll end up.
Thanks so much, Megan. Next up is Matthew Summers. Matthew is a student of the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences, and he will be presenting on ICU to recovery, fighting muscle wasting.
So when you walk into an intensive care unit, you're confronted with the sickest patients in the hospital. These patients could be any one of us or your loved ones. These patients are on life support, in comas, on breathing machines. These patients have suffered from burns, severe infections, heart attack or stroke, or been involved in accidents. 25% of patients on life support won't make it out of ICU alive. For those that do survive, they often suffer from weakness and poor physical recovery months to years after an ICU admission. This weakness is driven by muscle loss, which happens rapidly in ICU patients, with almost 20% of muscle lost in the first 10 days in ICU. This affects quality of life and the ability of patients to do things that they could do prior to becoming unwell, like returning to work. 60% of patients won't have returned to work 6 months after an ICU admission. So we need strategies in place to stop this muscle loss and improve the lives of ICU survivors. When ICU patients are really unwell on the breathing machine, they're too sick to eat or drink. So they receive liquid nutrition via a tube down into their stomach. A bodybuilder will tell you you need to eat high amounts of protein to build and maintain muscle. So why don't we change the makeup of this liquid nutrient formula to be higher in protein? But will these very sick ICU patients be able to use this higher amounts of protein to build muscle? My program of work will evaluate whether providing higher amounts of protein to these very sick ICU patients improves patients' survival, the amount of time these patients spend in hospital, and the amount of muscle that they have. This will be done with a large study where half of the patients will be given a very high protein liquid nutrient formula, and the other half will be given a standard protein liquid nutrient formula. And this will be done at 8 intensive care units across Australia and New Zealand. Currently, over 3,400 patients have been enrolled, making it the largest study of protein in ICU worldwide. I'll also measure muscle in response to this higher amounts of protein delivered using CT scans and ultrasounds over the duration of an intensive care stay. And in a very challenging study, I'll evaluate whether patients can use this higher amounts of protein to build muscle using sophisticated techniques of proteins that we can track and trace through the body and then measure in blood samples and muscle biopsies. So the question is providing higher amounts of protein the answer to improving the lives of ICU survivors? Let's find out. So let's fight for these patients so they don't just survive, they thrive.
Matthew, do we have a question for Matthew? Down the front. We'll just get a mic to you so that our audience online can hear the questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, really good talk. Obviously in ICUs you tend to have a lot of different patients with different reasons for being there, and you have specific ICUs for those. When you're picking your patients who are going to be in this study, is it specific sort of diseases and things that may or may not exclude them depending on like muscle and things like that, if you understand my question?
Very good question. Our study is really all comers that come into ICU that need a feeding tube and liquid nutrition via that feeding tube. So we haven't specifically picked patient groups because there is that need for all these patients to require nutrition, and that is, that subgroups within our study, particularly like acute kidney disease patients, might not actually benefit from this higher protein. So these will be sort of evaluated in subgroups and sort of hypothesis generating research within this large trial, which, as I said, will be the largest of protein in ICU, to sort of then move forward to that individualised care.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for Matthew.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Georgia Maloney, who is a student from the Faculty of Sciences, Engineering and Technology. And today she will be presenting Break the Chains, Sniffing Out Maritime Wildlife Trafficking. Take it away.
How can you find something you can't see? Imagine working in border security, where you're tasked with monitoring the over 200 million containers being shipped globally each year, yet you only have the resources to screen less than 2% of these containers. Which containers do you choose? Would you even consider looking for illegal wildlife products, despite the consequences for biodiversity, biosecurity, and public health? The illegal wildlife trade is a thriving, multi-billion-dollar global industry which threatens countless species and exploits vulnerabilities in these supply chains. We have seen increased reports of shipments being seized each year, yet these seizures represent only a small fraction of the true extent of wildlife trafficking activity, especially since we aren't really looking for it. Let's take the example of the pangolin, the most trafficked mammal in the world. All 8 species are endangered due to demand for their scales for traditional medicines. Recently, a shipment of 14 tons of pangolin scales was seized in Singapore, equivalent to 36,000 individuals. And remember, most of these shipments will go unnoticed. We need to disrupt the supply chain and increase seizure rates. So, how can we do this? Well, first we need to narrow it down because we clearly don't have the resources to screen every container. So, we have developed an algorithm based on shipping data and previous seizure information. The algorithm uses predefined risk indicators such as abnormal container weights and known wildlife trafficking routes to select which containers are more likely to be carrying wildlife products. Okay, so with this algorithm, we have gone from millions of containers to only a handful which require further investigation. Now, we need a simple but fast and effective way to further investigate these containers at the port. How can we do this? Well, why don't we sample the air? If we can't see it, maybe we can smell it. Different products give off unique odors which can be collected via the air extraction device we have developed using 3D printing technology. The device is fitted over the rear vent of the container and, using a fan, draws air through a specialized filter designed to capture scent. These filters are then presented to a trained detection dog who will screen samples rapidly and indicate if the target scent is present. The combination of the algorithm and the air extraction device will not only allow more containers to be screened, but also targeted screening of high-risk containers for wildlife. Together, we can break the chains of wildlife trafficking to help save vulnerable species from extinction and protect biosecurity and public health.
Do we have an audience question about this presentation? Or a judge's question? Fantastic. A judge. Oh, there's a microphone to your right.
Oh, thank you very much. Is this work? Yes. Thanks for a great presentation. Question about kind of the practical use of these capabilities. Have you partnered with any industry stakeholders on the waterfront to think about how this sort of capability can be implemented in the future?
Yeah. So my PhD is actually in collaboration with industry. So we are actually partnered with CMA CGM, who are a massive shipping company. So we're working obviously very closely with them to kind of figure out what would be practical and what their needs are, and we are sort of working towards that. We are also working with the Australian Border Force and we are actually going to be working really closely with them soon to test this out. So, and again, we'll be tailoring it a little bit towards, based off of that trial, what they may feel is better or what else they need from that. So, yeah, of course. Yeah.
A round of applause for Georgia. Thank you. Our next speaker is Jack Hetherington from the Faculty of Arts, Business Law and Economics. And his presentation is called Helping Little Miss Muffet to Find a Better Way. Take it away.
Who remembers the story of Little Miss Muffet? Hands up. Go on. Okay. For those of you who don't know, it starts off like this. Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Now you mightn't realise, but this is actually a story about eating cheese, where the curds are the cheese and the whey is the liquid left over from cheese making. And for every kilo of cheese that Miss Muffet has, she has 8 kilos of whey that she has to drink. You might think she gets sick of drinking all this whey and decides to pour it down the drain. But not only is that wasteful, it's bad for the environment and it costs her money too. And what if I was to tell you there are many ways for her to use her whey? She could turn it into a protein powder. She could ferment the sugars and turn it into alcohol. She could feed it to her animals or even use it as an energy source. All of these options are way better than putting it down the drain. Why am I telling you about this? Well, whey is a major source of food waste in Australia, and governments and industry want to do something about it. Miss Muffet could fill up an Olympic swimming pool every 3 days with the whey that is wasted here. That's 350 million litres each year. My PhD is looking at this problem. I've spoken to almost 1/3 of cheese manufacturers right across Australia, from large to small producers, to understand why they are not fully using their whey. And here's some of what I found. Firstly, cheesemakers want to be, you guessed it, cheesemakers. They don't want to be whey makers because they don't have the time, the money, or the motivation to do it. I also found a growing number of businesses of all sizes that are turning their whey from a waste to a high-value product, either by processing it themselves, teaming up to cut costs, or just giving it to someone down the road. One business I spoke to makes more money from whey than cheese. This means there are many different business models that cheesemakers can engage in that achieve the same thing. But still, we have many barriers to these, and we don't have the right motivators in place to get widespread change. I'm hoping that my research can help inform government and industry, and all of you, about this problem and the potential solutions. That way, we can get more effective policies, tools to support decision makers, and create demand for a more circular food system. So, the next time you go for a protein powder or go out and you get a gin made from whey, think about how you're helping solve food waste too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack. A question from the audience for Jack. Or from our judging panel, of course. Was there one up near the back somewhere?
I think one.
Oh, we have one down the front as well.
So how do you entice people to be whey makers?
That is a great question. And I guess if we were to think about what could governments do, right? One of my papers that I'm working on is currently there is actually a lot of penalties for businesses that put it down the drain, right? They get hit. One business I spoke to gets charged $160,000 a year in non-compliance penalties. But they are not actually considering about how they can make some of these really high-value products because they think there are a lot of barriers in the way to getting it. They can't get the right yeasts to make the alcohol. It's very secretive and they can't get it. what I would say is that there's many different ways to motivate people. It's about everyone here maybe becoming aware about whey-based products and how that can solve it and create demand for these kind of products and kind of helping cheesemakers with those opportunities. We are seeing, say, the European markets putting in requirements to meet certain certification standards. And so there's those kind of drivers as well. And also, I bet most of you probably didn't know what whey was coming into this session. And as a society, I think we can try and put some greater expectations on what's happening with the food waste that occurs right across our supply chain. So I think there's a few different ways to help incentivize businesses to change their behavior. Thank you.
Fantastic. Round of applause for that. Our next presenter is Chan-Hee Cho from the Faculty of Health and Medical Sciences, and his presentation is entitled Predicting Hip Implant Failure. Take it away.
Imagine this. The prescription for your medication have not been tested for safety. Imagine if 1 in 4 of the drugs we take home could send you to hospital instead. Fortunately, in Australia, all drugs have been thoroughly tested for safety and effectiveness. But when it comes to hip replacement surgeries, 1 in 4 of hip implants that surgeons can use have not been tested. In fact, new hip implant designs that are similar to previously accepted designs can make it into the operating theatre. But we know that sometimes these implants can become loose and detach from your hip joint, causing excruciating pain and sometimes an infection that can lead to an amputation. Catastrophic failures have happened in the past, where thousands of implants failed, which led to one of the most infamous medical disasters ever to be recorded in history. So, why don't the medical device manufacturers making these implants test them? Simply conducting these tests may take as long as 10 years, and it costs a fortune, something they're not willing to invest in. But what if we can predict the future, just like a psychic with a crystal ball? Well, in my thesis, I'm the psychic, and my crystal ball is a highly accurate X-ray machine that can detect movements up to 0.01 of a millimeter. That's less than the width of a single strand of hair. Currently, we know that if an implant moves within the first 2 years of surgery, it is likely to fail long-term. But I have shown that majority of the implant movement occurs within the first 6 months. This means that we can catch failing implants much sooner so that companies don't have to wait 2 to 10 years to test them. I have also shown that implants that was not tested with accurate X-ray measurements were more likely to fail. My study is the first in the world to show that all hip implant designs should be tested with accurate X-ray measurements before they're made available for widespread use. Ultimately, my thesis leads the way for medical device innovation whilst ensuring your safety. Because at the end of the day, I don't want you or your family to receive a poor performing implant and leave the outcome of the surgery to chance alone. Thank you.
Thank you for a great presentation. Do we have an audience question? Again, big wavy hands, a bit blind. No? A judge's question. Fantastic. Down the front. Microphone just on your right. Thank you.
With your methodology, how many people do we have to test to check to be sure that we know an implant's going to fail?
Since it's a very accurate measure, we only need to recruit around 20 to 30 patients.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. And unbelievably, we're at our last presentation for the evening. Last but certainly not least, we have Mabel Day. Mabel is from the Faculty of Sciences, Engineering and Technology, and she will be presenting Light-Initiated Degradation, a Brighter Future for PFAS. Take it away.
How many people woke up this morning and had a shower? You might have washed with soap, shampoo, conditioner, and then maybe put on some makeup or cosmetics. After that, you probably cooked some breakfast in your Teflon non-stick pan, and then maybe prepared some lunch in some grease-proof food packaging. After that, maybe you cleaned your kitchen using some cleaning products, and then started to get ready for the day by cleaning your teeth. At least, I'm hoping you all did that before coming in today. Finally, given the weather in Adelaide recently, you probably grabbed your waterproof rain jacket and then maybe a to-go coffee on your way in. So, while you were doing all of these things, did anybody stop and think about the impact on your health or the environment? All of the products that I've just mentioned contain per- or polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, which you may have heard about referred to in the news recently as forever chemicals. As their name suggests, PFAS last forever. This means they won't degrade naturally in the environment and they won't break down in your body. So once you've got them, there is no getting rid of them. In fact, nearly everyone here today will have some level of PFAS in them, with studies showing 99% of people with detectable PFAS in their blood. But why should you care about this? PFAS has actually been shown to increase your likelihood of cancers, diabetes, obesity, as well as lowering your immune response. Not only this, but PFAS will affect our next generation, as it's been shown to reduce fertility rates, but it can also be passed down from the mother to the unborn child, resulting in serious birth defects. So what am I going to do about this? Currently in Australia, there are no approved methods for PFAS degradation. And as PFAS is a human-made chemical problem, we thought we'd turn to chemistry for the solution. My research looks at utilising light-driven degradation techniques to break down PFAS into these safe and non-toxic products. We do this using carefully designed powders that I make in the lab to harness the energy from UV light that we shine upon them to break those really strong chemical bonds in the PFAS molecules. My results so far have been really exciting, and we've actually been able to show a full degradation of these PFAS molecules into their safe and non-toxic compounds within a matter of hours. But it's still early days, so as we look together towards a brighter future, one without PFAS, while I'm busy working on it in the lab, if you're wanting to do something about PFAS at home, I'd recommend switching out that Teflon pan for a stainless steel alternative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who would like to ask our final question of the evening? Question from the audience, I'm sure. Yes, there we go. Hand just over there. Thank you very much.
Hello, PFAS is in a lot of the plumbing systems, I'm guessing. Does your solution work with water? Like, how would it address that?
Yeah, great question. So obviously we're working on very small scales at the moment, just as we're beginning our remediation efforts. But the hope in the long term is to be able to use these powders and apply them to flow reactors so we can actually pass through contaminated water, shine the light above them, and then we'll have clean water coming out the other side. So it should work on large scale remediation as well.
Fantastic. Let's hear it from Mabel. Well, a big thank you to all of our presenters. You all did such a fantastic job, and you all had such wonderful confidence and presentation skills. I'm extremely impressed by all of you. And I know our judges will be too, so they have a bit of a tough time. I have now received the results. Thank you for your patience. Can I please invite all of our contestants to join me on stage. And I would like to congratulate again all of our finalists, Ashleigh Lake, Jyoti Kusha, Isabella Burton, Zane Marks, Megan Moon, Matthew Summers, Georgia Maloney, Jack Hetherington, Chan Hee Cho, and Mabel Day. A round of applause for our wonderful 10. And now for the prizes. I'm very pleased to be announcing the People's Choice winner. First of all, thank you to everybody who voted and who worked through the QR issues with us. We received a lot of votes. You were all very passionate about who you wanted to win, which is fantastic. But I'm thrilled to announce that the People's Choice Award winner is Chan Hee Cho. Congratulations. Congratulations. And now for our judges' runner-up. The runner-up of the University of Adelaide 2024 3-Minute Thesis is Jack Hetherington. And now, the winner of the University of Adelaide's 2024 3-Minute Thesis and representing the university in the Asia Pacific 3-Minute Thesis final. Please join me in congratulating Mabel Day. Well, congratulations once again, not only to our 3 prize winners, but to everybody who presented here tonight. You all did a wonderful job. Your research is so fascinating, and I can't wait to see where your careers take you. Thank you to everybody for being here tonight and being part of our special event, and thank you to everybody who joined us online. A big thank you as well, of course, to our judging panel, who I think had the hardest job in the room tonight, even harder than these 10 on stage, who was so fantastic. Now, look, if you enjoyed this evening, which I assume you did, then I reckon you'd love Research Tuesdays in general, where we share what research is happening here at the University of Adelaide. They resume as per normal next month. Please check out the Research Tuesdays website for more information and come along for more research at the university. Thank you and good night. Thank you.